Hello and welcome to part 4 of Insights with Experts on Wind Design. Things are always ever changing in the metal roofing industry. From tools to tech, methods to materials, there's a lot to keep up with. One of the biggest changes metal roofing experienced this year is the release of ASCE 716. Will the new standards found within be something you'll need to worry about on your next project? Stay tuned to find out for yourself. Joining us on our roundtable today are guests who are well suited to discuss this topic. Members of the Regulatory and Economic Resources Department of Miami-Dade County. Jamie Gascon is the county's Board and Code Administration Division Director, Lundy Clarke is a Senior Code Officer, and Gaspar Rodriguez is also a Senior Code Officer and member of the Florida Building Commission Roofing Technical Advisory Committee. Over to you, Mark.
So I guess I'd like to start by the big thing that recently happened, and it's going to have a very big impact on permitting from now on, is ASCE, the wind code, the wind standard. Has Florida just officially is using this 2016 version of it, and that must have a big impact on how you now view roofs, other aspects of buildings as far as the wind forces.
Most definitely, Mark. It's something that under the Florida Building Code's 7th edition, it does adopt ASCE 716 as the wind standard. And as you know, that introduces a difference and a lot more zones in the roof sections that need to be addressed, and pressure zones that need to be addressed with the different products that would be cladded and used there. It definitely required a lot of revamping and revamping tables, I should say, in our roofing application standards, so that all of these new zones could be addressed in assisting fabricators and contractors to apply products into these zones. I'll pass it on to Lundy if she want to expand on the standard itself.
Yes, these diagrams are from ASCE 716, and they show the new roof zones. Instead of just 1, 2, and 3, we have 1, 2R at the ridge, 3R at the ridge, 2N at the side, 3E at the edge, 2E at the edge on the gable, and on the hip we have everything except the 3R. The 3R loads are the highest of all of them, and they often exceed the ASCE 710 loads by 40 to 50 pounds a square foot. These loads are enormously high, and these don't even count the overhang loads. The overhang loads themselves take a component from the wall below, so they exceed even the roof loads. And that's the biggest change for ASCE 716. The interesting thing to me is that the only roof loads that have changed are the gable and the hip. The monoslope, the sawtooth, the stepped roofs have not changed at all. So these are the only two changes, in addition to the changes to the flat roof.
I've already fielded many questions on how do we come up with our specific design pressure for our buildings. What's the big difference? And the difference isn't in how you arrive at it. We're using a slightly different formula, but we're starting a little bit higher wind speed also. And we have more zones. So therefore, we have higher pressures. And that's where the big concern to the roofers and the manufacturers is, do they have systems that are of high enough rating to meet these new higher wind pressures?
A roof that may have been okay 6 months ago from a specific building height, a specific city, a specific area, wind speed zone and everything, all the other thing that goes into those calculations may be different today than it was 6 months ago. The requirement may be different, will likely be higher, right?
Most likely it will be higher, yes.
Yeah.
There are some subtle differences, and again, because you're using a different approach in the computations, you have these additional zones to consider, and now the standard is addressing how the wind interacts in those zones. You now have these elevated pressures in those zones. So if you're comparing it to the earlier version of the standard, yes, by all means, you're going to notice the difference. What prior required 100 PSF in that corner zone may now be a slightly higher pressure in that same area of the roof.
If a building product, like say a roof from a certain manufacturer, now had in its approvals data directly from using these external seam clamps, and it was higher, then that roof with those clamps in the specific design would be usable, right? From your perspective.
A lot of the product approval procedures are performance-based. So you'll have a test standard that's applicable to a system, and its performance rating is going to be based on the performance you achieved in testing. So by enhancing a system with additional components or clamps or fasteners or reducing purlin spacing, all of these are variables in the parameters of the system's design that could ultimately have an enhanced performance. And all of that is what would be necessary to show proof in revising a product approval or obtaining the approval under those set of conditions. So from what exists today, the vast majority of them, as we know, may not have these additional components. The elevated pressures that ASCE 7 is dictating now are necessary, could be proven by some of these manufacturers to incorporate these additional components, run through the testing to prove the elevated performance, and obtain the respective approvals.
Can things be done on a project by project level to get the approval, the NOA, or with just purely bringing data in for a specific project?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a one-time product approval option that we have here in Miami-Dade County, that any jurisdiction in Miami-Dade could refer you to the product control section to show the evidence of that performance and that product's limits of use and qualify it under a one-time product approval. The one-time product approvals are specific for one permit for use on one address only.
Okay.
So it has those limitations.
The performance of an external seam clamp is going to vary from metal roof to metal roof. It needs to be on a specific basis, and that's how Miami-Dade's approached it in the past, is looking at that specific job site, the way the roof was engineered, the performance of this standing seam clamp, the entire assembly as a whole.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's to get these conditions and limits of use qualified on the product approval so that all the performance can be conveyed to a jurisdiction that's going to ultimately permit this.
That's going to do it for us this time on our Insights with Experts Wind Roundtable. But before we go, let's look at some of the key takeaways to keep in mind when it comes to ASCE 716. The major change is the increased number of wind zones, as well as higher starting wind loads. When compared to ASCE 710, these new standards will definitely be noticeable. This means roofers and manufacturers will need to be certain that they can make these new requirements. However, product approval can be obtained by showing proof of enhanced performance to the proper jurisdiction. There's also the option of approvals on a project-by-project basis, which is similarly based on a product's tested performance, but is only good for one address. Big thanks goes out once again to Jamie, Lundy, and Gaspar from Miami-Dade County. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. If you found this information helpful, give us a like and hit subscribe to catch new episodes as soon as they're released. Or if there's a topic you'd like to see us cover in the future, leave us a comment below and let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.